Okay, folks, who's ready to gobble up some turkey? Who's ready to gobble up some mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, and everything? Yep, Thanksgiving is upon us. And I mean, this is the show to lead us into Thanksgiving Day. Well, you know what? First, I'm gonna give thanks that Syracuse basketball is starting to look like it's hitting its stride a little bit. Yeah, there was a little inconsistency for a while, but now it seems as though we've got a good steady base, especially with JG3, Joe Girard III, and Buddy Boeheim, and the rest of them, including Elijah Hughes, Barama Sidibe, and everybody. What a big win against Cornell, and then against Bucknell. The offense exploded. If this is the Syracuse team to look forward to the rest of the season, good things can only happen, as they were pretty good performances, especially against Bucknell. And now that during the Thanksgiving holiday, they head down to New York City, albeit not to our second home, Madison Square Garden, but to the Barclays Center, for the NIT tip-off and everything. Because we play Oklahoma State on Wednesday, and we'll either play Ole Miss or Penn State on Friday. And it would be an interesting thing to play Penn State on the hard court. Because, I mean, you know all about our rivalry on the gridiron against the Nittany Lions. We had a pretty good rivalry against the Nittany Lions on the hard court, too. But the last time SU and Penn State played on the hard court was 1982. It's been a long time, and you know what? Be good to see how SU matches up against Penn State on the hard court. And Penn State's hard court team isn't as big as their gridiron team. We'll see what happens down there in Brooklyn, guys. And speaking of the orange, let's go from the hard court to the gridiron and say, thank goodness Saturday is the last game of the season. Because again, it seemed as though the orange went back to their old ways on the gridiron against Louisville. Yeah, Scott Satterfield definitely has turned Louisville around from that Putz that used to be their coach, Putz Petrino. Or I should say, Putztrino. Satterfield's turned the Cardinals around. They're playing good, and guess what? They again showed why Syracuse's defense is a pretty big deficit. I mean, Orange gave up over 600 yards of offense to Louisville in a 56-34 loss. And sadly, we won't be going bowling for the 5th time in 7 years. You know what? SU fans deserve better than what the gridiron has been doing. Last year was a tease, just like Molly Ringwald was on The Breakfast Club. It was just a tease. But I mean, you're not going to hear the football team yell, "No, I never did it!" Because you know what? Yeah, you've done it. 5 out of 7 years. Losing record. You know what? Well, I wonder what the offseason's going to bring for Babers and the rest of the football team. Because you know what? We deserve better. Well, let's end pretty good against Wake Forest, shall we? Let's end this nightmare that was this season. But I'm going to go from a nightmare to something pretty good. Buffalo with another dominating performance against Denver, an overmatched Broncos team. And you know what? Speaking of turkey, gravy, mashed potatoes, and everything, they're going to go down to Texas, to one of the traditional places where they play football on Thanksgiving. They take on Dallas down there. But the thing is, this short turnaround, you don't know who it's going to benefit. Dallas gave a hell of a battle to New England, and of course, the phantom call struck again because Dallas was called twice for tripping. Looking at the replays, what were they tripping? Looks as though somebody was tripping over their own feet, a la the referees. And of course, I think the referees were also conversing with Tom Brady. You just tell me what to call and I'll do it. You know what? Again, the beneficiary of phantom calls. Hey, phantoms, it's Thanksgiving, not Halloween. And I just shudder to think what's going to happen in a few weeks. As this is the start of a big stretch for the Bills. Going down the stretch, there's no easy game. They got Dallas, and then they got the red-hot Baltimore Ravens, then they got Pittsburgh, then New England, and the suddenly resurgent New York Jets to end the season. Gonna be an interesting stretch run for the Bills, if you know what I mean. Keep up the good work. We are in prime playoff position. And I'm gonna go from talking about that to another mess that seems to be happening thanks to outgoing Supervisor Lazaro. Apparently he's introduced resolution that because Chief Peenstra and Lieutenant Snyder entered into negotiations with the rest of the department over a contract and benefits, that both Chief Peenstra and Lieutenant Snyder should be reduced in rank to sergeant. You know what? That goes against everything the civil service and these things go against. As you know what? It is a civil service position to be a police officer, but apparently they're saying that you got to have a separate negotiating team for command structure. But because they entered into command structure with the rest of the officers, that they should be reduced in rank to sergeant. Well, you know what? Chief Peenstra and Lieutenant Snyder earned their roles there in the department. They earned their ranks. And you know what? It just seems as though another mess that Lazaro wants to enter into, especially with this whole thing with the dump that was the big thing for the board for the last couple of years. I know he didn't win re-election, but look, enough is enough with this. And you know what? Chief Peenstra and Lieutenant Snyder should still be Chief Peenstra and Lieutenant Snyder. And I think the rest of the Seneca Falls Police Department would definitely agree. Because you know, the rest of them, Sebastian would definitely not be genteel about this. And also, Miss Anderson would definitely say, hey, you don't mess with my commanders. Well, you know what? The one thing I have to say is Chief Peenstra and Lieutenant Snyder are two you definitely can look up to. No wonder I got a crick in my neck. And last but not least, this 10-year challenge that it seems as though is sweeping across Facebook. Yeah, a lot of my friends and a lot of people want to try this because, yeah, Facebook has definitely been around 10 years. It is interesting to see the changes in some people. Heck, if I undertook it, and I don't know if I will, you'd see my hair shorter and a little bit grayer. But I digress. Well, of course, you could be like my friend Jennifer Christensen. No change. She still is one of the prettiest people around, and she's one of the best people I know. But I think for her picture, do you think she could have looked a little less seductive? Yeah, she's got good eyes. Well, it's like, hey, I'm just too seductive. But you know what? I think your husband and your kids would say, hey, tone it down a little bit, would you? Oh, well. I'm Ken Haas, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.